Welcome to Ballers and Briefs. This is the Week 7 recap and the Week 8 Thursday night football. Buffalo or Tampa Bay traveling to Western New York to take on the Buffalo Bills. So we wanted to get you guys kind of started on a little bit of where we went right, where we went wrong. I know a little last week was a little bit disjointed, being that we all weren't here together on Saturday, but we did. Phil did put his picks in for Sunday and on the Facebook page. And Brad's stardoms, if you paid attention to what Brad said and what we talked about on Saturday, if you had those guys on your bench and you didn't play them, you lost. So let's get straight to it. You want to start on DFS side or you want to start on the season-long side, guys?
It's up to y'all. It don't matter to me. You can start season long.
Season long. That's fine.
Let's do season long. Let's go there. So the big picture here is Mike Evans was Brad's play. Get him in Atlanta. We talked about it. Him against the Atlanta defense. Baker Mayfield seemed to feed Mike Evans like we said he would. And what does he do? 20.2 points. So 6 for 8 for 82 yards and a touchdown. So I mean,
I definitely like that matchup again. Given the target share, given the opponent, it just really felt that Mike Evans could potentially have a really good matchup. Definitely from a fantasy wise perspective, and just from a season long perspective. I have him in my season long now. I actually have a bevy of receivers, so sometimes I have to kind of have a tough choice each week. And so because of Adam Thielen recently coming on in my 10-man league. So from that perspective, it's definitely it was definitely a stardom for me last week. I guess it wasn't enough though, because Cody still ended up getting a W on me in the 10-man league. But definitely was a good start from the perspective that he did end up having a really good fantasy performance.
That was we're not going to talk about who's made the climb back from the 0-4 dumpster fire that it started out the season with. So your boy here has railed off 3 straight in the 12-man league, and then because San Francisco's defense helped me out by getting their ass kicked by Minnesota on Monday night. But and then the 10-man league, it's been just totally back and forth. That's what Brad and I played one another in on this week, and we ended up it's just one of those beat down, scratching, claw.
It came down to the wire for the listeners. Down to the Monday night game. I think I was down about 5 leading into the Monday night game with Hawkinson on my side, and then I believe McCaffrey on his side. And so I mean, even just checking the the fantasy for the predictor, I only had about a 14% chance going into it. So, of course, I'm looking for a little bit of a miracle, but I did like Hawkinson versus the 49ers. He ended up actually going 11 receptions for 86 yards. So, from a tight end perspective, that was an awesome game that I needed. Bad thing was that I was going against that man on the other side, C-Mac. And so, sometimes you got to pay that cost when you go against
C-Mac has been one of those guys that, I've had him in the past and it's ended up burning me. But C-Mac seems to be one of those guys now that he's just a jack of all trades. And I thought this oblique injury or rib injury, whatever it was going to really hinder him going into that game. And I was like, so afraid. So I ended up grabbing Mitchell off the waiver wire at the last minute. And I was on a plane and I was like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. I don't have no access to make this lock. So I'm just I saw that McCaffrey said he was fine and good to go. So I rode with it. So it ended up paying off, but it's all.
From the other side, I did get the W in my 12 man.
We can kind of move into DFS.
Yep.
You did. Top score,
Cody's
right?
lagging.
You get top score?
Yeah, Cody's lagging a little bit.
I don't even know if he heard you.
I was gonna say that in the 12-man league, I was able to get the W there, so got the 5-2 in that league. I believe that puts me right up at the top in that league, which is interesting because actually I think I started off 1-2 there, but Action Jackson has gotten hot these last couple of weeks, and so that's been paying off for my team in that league. But definitely done flipped it to a 5-2 on that side. But just again, a quick note on the season long before we jump into the fantasy daily. Just like Cody said, sometimes you could start 1-4. Don't give up on your league. It's a long season, just like it's a long NFL season. It's a long season. Keep working that waiver wire. Just like we said, change up your defenses, change the kickers. If you got to trade, do that. But also check your matchups. Check to see if you're going against if you got a receiver going up against a really good cornerback, get him out of there. Have the heart to make those tough decisions. If you feel that quarterback who's just not been playing good, but you can get a solid out of another quarterback each week, go ahead and go with them. Sometimes it just takes kind of mixing it up a little bit in your lineup to get that perfect number to get you over the hump. Well, I think Cody might be having a little bit of technical difficulty still here, but I think we're gonna want to try to at least move into the daily.
I'm gonna try that.
We saw that before the show started, we was talking about looking at that Millie Maker lineup. I know you said that you actually hit on a good deal of them, right?
Yeah. I don't have a way to bring it up on the screen because Cody sent this in a group chat, but I can tell you that Pat Mahomes was the quarterback, Jahmyr Gibbs was running back 1, Dante Foreman was running back 2, Cortland Sutton was wide receiver 1, Josh Downs was wide receiver 2, Jackson Smith-Njigba was wide receiver 3, Travis Kelce was tight end, Mark Andrews was flex, and Cleveland defense was the defense. I was not able to make the podcast last week, but I did post a bunch of plays that I liked in the Facebook group. So if you're not a part of that, make sure you join it. But if you are in there, you saw them. I called Patrick Mahomes. I called Jahmyr Gibbs. I called Dante Foreman. I called the Seattle and Broncos game. So that should have gave you hints to Jackson Njigba and Cortland Sutton. I also called Cleveland's defense. I also called Mark Andrews, and I also called Travis Kelce. So the only one on this list that I did not call was Josh Downs. I don't think there's any way I ever would have called that. I'm not even going to try to take credit of somewhere I could have got to that. Clearly, I was all over Cleveland's defense. I thought, actually, when that game started, I was like, man, what is happening? Like, there's no way Cleveland just shut down the 49ers, and now they're getting burned by Indy. And I think they had a pick six. They also had a couple other interceptions, a fumble. They made plays on defense regardless of how out of hand that game got. So there's no way I would have ever called Josh Downs, but I also haven't looked at the numbers to see if maybe he was replaceable and this lineup could have been beat. But for the most part, I had a very successful week, running and being all over the players. I think if anybody copied my player pool that I put on Facebook, they also would have had a very successful week. I mean, getting one player wrong in a Millie Maker can still get you, $200,000. So be mindful of that. I only did 3 lineups. I did 2 GPP lineups and the 20 max because I didn't have much time to research, and I had the family thing on Saturday, and every single one of my lineups crushed and was at top money. So, like I said, I was on all of that, and it was kind of easy to get on that. I mean, the Kansas City game was the highest over/under. That's how you get the Mahomes right there. I always say you want to target games that have lots of point projections to be scored. Jahmyr Gibbs was coming back, getting the bulk of the workload with a favorable matchup against Baltimore. So that was one. Dante Foreman, I was all over. I put that in Facebook. Chicago loves to run the ball more than anything. That's what they do. And Khalil Herbert was out, so it was a full everything go mode for Dante Foreman. I don't know if I could have projected that performance, but I definitely was all over him. He's in every single lineup I did. Cortland Sutton and Jackson Smith-Njigba called the Seattle game. That's another one. You have Denver's defense who was just alleviated by Miami. They were also destroyed by somebody else.
Yep.
So you're projecting this to be a high-scoring game, although I don't think it was. Yeah, it wasn't high-scoring, but it should have been. So that's how you get to those players playing them. They still put up great fantasy points. Jackson Smith was only 3,900 and, got you, let's see how many points he got. You got you 16 points. So he got you 4x value. And that's what we're talking about, his price per his points. So you can just say it's 4K. He got you 16 points. 4 times 4 is 16. You need 4 to 5x value from your players in order to win. And that's what happened in this lineup.
I think one of the interesting notes too is that he actually went with 2 tight ends in the lineup, in the full lineup. That wasn't something that I kind of really thought about before. I kind of played a lot of times like I would on a fantasy long, so I kind of learned something from this lineup here about maybe taking a chance with the 2 tight end stack if you really feel comfortable with the matchups.
That's a good eye.
Thing.
That's a good eye. I mean, in my world, I'm kind of used to it. I do DFS a lot. I do a lot of research from other people that are pros at DFS, and 2 tight end sets is what we call getting different, number one. And it's also applicable in situations where one of the tight ends could essentially be a receiver. And in this case, both of them have shown, Kelsey and Mark Andrews, you could run as a wide receiver the way they catch passes. So it's not, it doesn't put it past me at all that this person did that. He basically had a 5 wide receiver lineup the way I look at it. And I think, Travis Kelce has like a history of destroying the Chargers. So I believe that was called around the board as well. Kelce was a lock in all formats with that history. Give me 1 second. All right. I don't know if Cody is back and can hear us. I mean, he's there, but he's not
Cody,
talking.
can you hear us?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me now?
Oh, I guess we're having a little bit more technical difficulties.
I can hear you
with Cody's mic.
I don't know if you guys can hear me. It's been okay.
Yeah, it's just
okay. So what I was saying is, with this particular Millie Maker lineup, something that was kind of weird I saw.
The mic is being a little bit unkind to Cody.
There was no Chargers bring back.
He's so delayed that I don't know when he's talking and he's not talking. You're not moving, and then
it's like an alien radio signal. Yeah. We get it like a little bit later than what we should.
It's because I'm.
All right. I mean, while he's having difficulties, I'll take over a little bit. Yeah. We can move into tomorrow's preview for Tampa Bay versus Buffalo Showdown. Buffalo has looked horrible as a team their last 2 games. And then they just lose. I think they did lose this. They lost. And it's wild who they're losing to. And then they lost the week before to like the Jets or something, right? Like they're just not looking good. I don't know what it is, because obviously they're a stout team and they got a lot of stout players, but I don't know what's going on. And then on the other side,
Giants.
That's what it was. They lost to the Giants.
As soon as they went to London, they like lost their steam. They lost their swag because
they left it there.
The Jags came back. I think maybe 1-1, but lost again. I think it's the kind of the up and down hurdle that you kind of get a little bit with Josh Allen that no one kind of talks about because of the fact that he's at least brought his team to the AFC Championship games before. But you sometimes have these weeks they'll go by where it's just very, very subpar, inconsistent play. even with all the weapons I feel like he has around him to be successful.
Correct. So that brings the question: what Bills are we going to see tomorrow? And for DFS purposes,
I'm expecting big time Allen though tomorrow. Against that Tampa Bay defense at home, the crowd will be wild on the one side, but then quiet for him. I like it. I like it. But of course,
it opens up a couple ways to play DFS. You could play it your way, where it's their back, it's the Buffalo, or you play it the slow way, where Buffalo might be losing, but it's close because Tampa Bay also doesn't really do a lot, and it might be a running back field goal defense type of game. Or it's a fucking Mike Evans with 2 touchdowns and Stephon Diggs with 3 type game.
Yeah, I definitely like Evans again here. Maybe not as much as I liked him last week, just because I feel like that Bills defense is definitely a little bit stingier, but I could still see enough target share going to him because of the fact that as I was saying, I predict more so a stronger offensive production from the Bills, and so with them potentially being up, that'll lead to more production for Evans to get target share.
Correct. I like that. I think, especially after what I've seen from the other teams over the past 2 games, I think Baker will be successful on moving the ball on them. And it seems like Mike Evans is his go-to, is the number one. I think with Tom Brady, it was Chris Godwin, but with Baker, it's definitely Evans. I think he's getting like a 26% target share on the season, 27% target share last week. And then it also looked like Trey Palmer got the same amount of target share as Godwin, and then Devin Tompkins was somebody there that was getting the ball as well. And it was like, he wasn't even on the field that much, 38% of the time, and he got 10% target share when he was on the field. So I think it makes interesting, very cheap, very low-owned players for tomorrow's slate that you're going to want to get exposure to moving forward in your lineups.
From a get different play, what do you think about Phil Latavius Murray tomorrow?
That is a get different play.
4,800 in comparison to Cook. Now, I know the production hasn't really been there since I believe week 2, but it just seems like this is the type of game where also the Bills want to try to get the ground game going again. And I know sometimes he's been able to be a little bit more effective than Cook and getting that hard 1 yard. And so I just could potentially see maybe a goal line touchdown for him.
I don't know how laggy I am now.
Still a bit laggy. What I don't like about Murray is he's not catching the ball. So I maybe like Murray as a punt play on FanDuel, because if he gets you that touchdown, he's in the nuts and he's going to be low owned. But on DraftKings, I'd rather have a running back that's getting catches. And it doesn't look like either one of them are really getting catches. And
not a ton.
That could be part of the reason why their game script hasn't been going good, right? Like, they're not getting enough passes to the backfield to create plays, screens, things like that are always effective with converting, third downs or third and long, second and long. And maybe they're not doing that because there's no passes to James Cook last week, no passes to Latavius Murray last week. So what's going on in the backfield? I also thought I saw a lot more Latavius Murray that last game. It was about even with James Cook.
I would like to see that split, but I agree. I think that he definitely saw a little bit more.
I think it was like 48 to 41%. 48% James Cook, 41% Murray.
Plays, and I just feel that eventually, it's just the game.
Matter of time if he takes that spot. He might be trying to take that spot.
And
you might be on
because of the losses recently. I know sometimes the offense will want to kind of do some things a little bit differently. Maybe they feel that they want to get back to a little bit more of a ground and pound instead of sort of finesse game, which Cook gives you. But again, it's just that's a little bit of guessing and kind of predicting what may happen due to the loss last week.
Correct. And And another thing I'm seeing that probably, went into that is Stephon Diggs had a 55% target share. And it's like, at some point,
crazy.
at some point, the defense knows where you're going with the ball.
Yeah.
I mean, that's great for fantasy purposes. That's insane that literally half your plays went to one player. But as a defense, I know that's where you're going. They actually have talent in Gabe Davis, and he's only getting 13% targets. Like,
that's another one for tomorrow.
Yeah, Gabe Davis is a definite play for tomorrow.
That's another one for tomorrow.
Gotta hit that.
Can you guys hear me now?
It just seems like it's gonna be one of those games. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, so I had to get off my computer for some reason. It was just being total dog shit, so I got to make up my phone. So what I was trying to say, I'm going to jump back really quick. What I was trying to say in the Millie Maker lineup was there was no Chargers bringbacks, which that was strange to me. I think you could have got Josh Palmer for 4,800, which I think when I did the math would have worked out. So in Phil's terms, where the guy went with no bringback was a very contrarian play. In regards to
actually, in the past weeks, nobody's been doing a bring back. Every Millie Maker has not been doing a bring back. They're just doing
really weird to me.
Team stack, no game stack.
So super contrarian. So like there was a stack with Kelsey and Patrick Mahomes. But going back to Thursday night's games, what I was trying to say is when you guys were on the Mike Evans thing, Chris Godwin is questionable going into tomorrow night. So he's questionable with a neck injury. So we don't really know
what type of, like a stinger neck injury.
It didn't really elaborate on the injury report. It just said neck. He had a limited practice today. We do know that Chris Godwin has a concussion history. And as Phil notes before, that concussions are really not an injury, but we do know that they're an injury in the eyes of the NFL because, as Phil and I know, being that he's a licensed attorney and I am a non-licensed attorney, we do know that liability is a very big thing in this world. So that's a big problem for the NFL. So they had to pay out all that money for CTE. So that's the reason why they make a big deal out of it. But with that being said, also, Baker Mayfield is questionable going into tomorrow night with a knee injury. We saw Baker take off during that Atlanta game. We saw him take off, and he had it was 30-plus yard tote down the sideline during that ball game. And, I mean, as much as we like to shit on Baker, and he's not a run-first quarterback, but running is a part of his game. It's more or less, I got to get the hell out of here kind of running as opposed to I'm going to take off running, if that makes any sense. Like, if I see a hole and I don't have anybody to go and there's a end coming or outside linebacker coming from the outside, I got to go. So that's what Baker's kind of game is, and that's what he broke down the play during that Atlanta game. So if his knee's bothering him, this is one of those games where you have to be kind of like very careful and say, okay, well, am I going to play him? Because that shit burned me on last Thursday, right? Like I kind of faded Trevor Lawrence, thinking that okay, he's going in with a knee problem, and ended up having his best rushing game of the season. So that's one of those things. Like you got to, and he led the whole team in rushing yards actually. So it's one of those things you have to be mindful of that. But at the end of the day, he's a quarterback. And what do quarterbacks do with their legs? When they're throwing the ball, they push off. So that's one of those other things. And then you guys are talking about getting to Latavius Murray. What does Latavius Murray do? He runs the ball in the 1 and the 2 gap, right? Who occupies the 1 and the 2 gap for Tampa? Vita Vea. Vita Vea is questionable with a groin injury. Again, we know groin injuries are probably one of the worst to overcome because it's such a thin muscle and it's a thin tissue area, and he's a big man.
And he has to squat down, basically putting pressure on that groin muscle every play.
Yep.
Every play he's out there.
So, and that's really the injuries, the main injuries on Tampa side, and then on Buffalo side, no Dawson Knox and no Quentin Morris, so that's 2 tight ends. So the Dalton Kincaid show is in full effect coming tomorrow. So I'm sure he's going to be over-owned, probably, being that he's the only tight end available for Buffalo.
Correct. And with the fact that Godwin is questionable as well on the other side, it limits who you feel really comfortable with. You know, any love for Rachaad White tomorrow?
Chase Edmonds, they did activate off of IR today also. So
I like Rachaad White tomorrow big time.
Yeah.
I think he's actually going to be one of my captains. I say that because of ownership more than anything, but also because the running back in Tampa has been the captain the second most of anybody on their team. Wide receiver 1 on Tampa has been the captain the most, but these numbers are probably skewed a bit from Tom Brady being there and Leonard Fournette being there. So they're definitely probably skewed in that aspect, but it doesn't skew the fact that their play style and their playbook seems to favor the running back and the wide receivers in showdown games. And with that said, it's easier to dive away from a quarterback captain for Tampa, easier to dive away from a tight end captain for Tampa, easier to dive away from a wide receiver 2 or 3 captain for Tampa or a running back 2 for Tampa.
It feels like one of those games where you might have to somewhat similar. I mean, I know you said that Rachaad White's ownership is probably low because like when I looked at when I did my notes today, there was no ownership projections at that point at around 3 o'clock, right? So, or whatever.
That was for Rachaad White. You're saying, Cody?
No, I'm just saying like Phil was saying that he's on the Rachaad White. But when I was looking at ownership projections today, when I did the notes that I sent you guys, that I couldn't find any ownership projections. I
don't have any ownership projections right now. Neither. It's my assumption he's going to be lower owned.
I got you.
Because you got Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, and Mike Evans that are going to eat the exposure. You already know Diggs is getting 55% target share last week, dude. He's literally going to be the highest owned player on this slate. I also think it might be one of those slates where you have to eat the chalk.
I
might have to get Diggs in your captain spot.
I would say in general, the last 3 weeks of the season, like going back to the Millie Maker we saw on Sunday, and this is Sunday's Millie Maker, right? And this is not a showdown, but I'm just going to use that for example because that's the numbers I have in front of me. Especially on the picks that Phil hit on, those guys were a little bit on the chalkier side than kind of what we wanted, what we're trying to tell you guys when we say get different, right? We're trying to be sub 10%, right? Like to have at least 1 or 2 of those guys at sub 10%, because that's the only way that you're going to break away if that guy goes off. Now, for instance, like those guys that Phil called just off the top of my head, Mahomes was about 11.6% owned. Jahmyr Gibbs was 15.5%. Foreman was 10%. Travis Kelce was a whopping 17.9%. That's a lot for a tight end. And then Mark Andrews was almost 20%. So that's a lot more for a tight end. So I'm just saying we've lended to players in the last few weeks have been chalkier players in these higher scoring lineups, because the problem is we've had these more random injuries happening to these players that we would expect to be chalk that are higher priced, and that's what brings their price, their ownership projection down, right? Because if you can't afford, you're trying to look for that 4x value for a guy like Christian McCaffrey who's $9,200, right? Or this last week it was Cooper Kupp who was like $9,000. People can't justify and afford that, so their ownership projection goes down because they cost so much. But I mean, Patrick Mahomes was 8,300 and he was still 11% owned. That's quite a bit of ownership.
I mean, I talked about it a couple weeks ago with Mostert. sometimes you have to eat the chalk. Certain spots you got to eat the chalk, and then other spots you got to get different. This might be a case like that where you eat the chalk on Diggs and you get different somewhere else. That Millie Maker lineup he's talking about, they got different in numerous spots. Josh Downs was like sub 2% owned. And then they also played 2 tight ends in that lineup. That's getting different by itself. But in this game, you know, there's probably some turds to look at, like Reggie Gilliam, however you say his name, Chase Edmonds, Trent Sherfield. There's ways to get
on that extra tight end for Tampa, like Cole Keith or dudes like that are at the very bottom of the depth chart.
Cade Otton gets a lot, dude. Like, or he did when, you know, Brady was there. But you might have to eat Diggs and do something different. Like, a lot of things people won't do is play the opposing defense of their captain.
I was saying that you play that Tampa.
You could play Diggs with Tampa's defense, dude, and there you're different. Even though you ate the chalk with Diggs, you're different because not a lot of people, if they're playing a wide receiver for a team, they're going to be like, no way am I putting the defense of the other team, man. That doesn't make sense. But you just saw it with Cleveland, right? It was like a 70-point game if you combine the totals, but they still were the nuts defense because they made a pick 6 and they had a couple interceptions and fumbles.
Recovery in the end zone.
Yeah, so, or that's what it was. So they got their points and the receivers got their points. So Diggs could have 2 or 3 touchdowns, 100-yard game, break the slate, be the nuts captain, and Tampa could get one of those tipped balls for a pick 6 or a couple sacks, a fumble, add all that up, and now they're in the nuts.
I mean, Josh Allen does have a propensity to throw interceptions. I mean, we know that.
Well, he has the last 2 weeks, that's for sure.
He's thrown an interception 4 out of 5 games. I mean, he threw one last week, threw one against the Giants and one against the Jags. He didn't throw one against Miami, and he threw one against Washington. So
it could happen. That's your way to get different.
I mean, and this is either going to go one way or the other. I don't see this game being like a middle of the road. It's either Buffalo is going to run away with this. This is just my personal opinion. I may be totally wrong. I mean, I know the over/under is like 42.5, and it's Buffalo minus 8.5. I wouldn't touch them Buffalo minus 8.5. I just feel
that's high.
I just
don't. How they've been playing, that's high, dude. That sounds like a trap bet, dude. They want you
and they
to bet the other team.
I mean, they haven't scored over. I mean, they scored 25 on Sunday. They scored 14 against the Giants.
They haven't been playing good.
I mean, they ended up.
We know the real Buffalo's there.
They ended up beating the Giants, but like it was a 4-9 game, a 14-9 game, and then like they scored 20 against Jacksonville and 48 against Miami. So since they, like Brad said, coming back from London, they haven't looked the same. They haven't been the same Buffalo team. They're giving up. The quarterback rating for Josh Allen has not been in the 150s where we've seen it before. I mean, it's just, and his rushing numbers are. He's not putting up the numbers that we expect for Josh Allen. I mean, like he had seven carries for 17 yards this week, 2 carries for 11 yards. I mean, he's had a touchdown. He had a touchdown against New England, but it was only for 7 yards.
I mean, I think another way you could get different too is pairing like Stephon Diggs with the opposing quarterback. It's something else nobody does. If they put a wide receiver in the captain spot, they're always like, I got to put him with his quarterback because he's a wide receiver. If he catches a touchdown, it's points for the quarterback and points for him. But we've seen nuts lineups where because of price per dollar, you can't make that lineup more significant than a way cheaper Baker Mayfield who throws the same amount of touchdowns, even though it's to somebody else, or like Cody said, Baker's been running the ball. So there's a chance that Baker gets the same amount of points as Josh Allen, but he might cost $2,000 or $3,000 less, and therefore you can allocate that $2,000 or $3,000 somewhere else to build a higher base player where you wouldn't be able to do in a Diggs Allen stack. And now you have the nuts lineup and you paired with the opposing quarterback. And people at home are like, who the fuck does that? Why would you pair them with that? That's why. Price per dollar. Different. That's another way to get different and allocate your price per dollar.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's just. I also think that, like, and this is kind of like plays into your, like Brad and I's season long. You're really hoping that this is, and this is my thing. Like, I love how DraftKings, it's different, right? Like, it's its own showdown. It doesn't pair. Like, we don't play the Thursday through Monday slate or Thursday through Sunday slate on DraftKings because it's just such a Thursday night is just such an anomaly, right? And like when you have that person that's playing on Thursday night, and for instance, if you have a Josh Allen, if you got lucky enough to get I say lucky enough, right? To get a Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs stack in your season long, and those dudes go out and blow it up, and they just hang 20 apiece or 30 apiece on Tampa, you're golden, right? That's 60 points. But if they go out there and they just plumb shit the bed and pull a Thursday night special that we have seen in the past where one of them gets 10 points and then Stephon Diggs gets 2 catches for a whole whopping 15 yards and he got you a whole 4.5 points, you're screwed before you even got to Sunday. Because now you're hoping that the person that you're playing kicker doesn't outscore you. So it's I hate that about Thursday night.
On those Thursday night games, but at least from that perspective, you have some additional slots where you may then have to kind of throw in that more of that boomer bust guy instead of that guy that may get you a consistent, 12 to 15. You might look for a guy that could get you 1 point or could get you 20 points. You might have to go ahead and pull the trigger on a player like him that when you get into those situations. But I do agree with having sort of 2 players or even more than one player in that Thursday matchup always gets me a little nervous. I like to kind of reserve it till that Sunday. But if the matchup fits and it looks favorable, you got to play it because just like Cody said, what happens if Diggs and Allen go off and he put you up 60? Well, then that's almost a slotted dub because the rest of your points should come in the way you want them to.
Yep, I agree.
I mean, I look forward to for Brad Jaman, Mike Evans. I mean, I know that supposedly according to DraftKings or whatever that the Buffalo secondary is second best in the league right now, and that they could be getting a healthy Von Miller back. I do know that Ed Oliver is questionable, but I just don't know if now that we've seen these other teams kind of get in their head and that the defense is really, I mean, this is 2 defensive coaches, right? Like you got Todd Bowles and Sean McDermott, and it doesn't look. And maybe this last week with New England, just kind of like Bill Belichick still kind of, even though his team's not winning the division, he still kind of owns the division, right? Like so, like they still kind of work. His teams kind of work or fluke. He flukes. At least once a year, he kind of flukes a team, right? Like in the division, like dashes their hopes, right? And I feel like that may be the Bills this year. So I don't know if the Bills are in the position to kick them while they're down kind of thing, or if this is going to be the Bills just come out and like, damn it, like everybody's already started counting us out of the Super Bowl. We're going to get Ken Dorsey's offense going. We're going to be like, hey, I need Ken Dorsey, University of Miami, Ken Dorsey, not the throwing the clipboard, breaking the tablet, Ken Dorsey that we've seen. So I don't know. And in Sean McDermott's defense, it's not the same defense that they had when Leslie Frazier was the defensive coordinator there. So I just don't. I mean, yeah, you can have all the talent in the world, but ever since Tre'Davious White has gone out, it's not the same. They don't look the same. And Von Miller's getting older, and he's not on the field all the time. And Tampa's not got a great offensive line, but it's not a terrible offensive line. Obviously, they're 3-3, and Baker Mayfield looks like Baker Mayfield did when he was with Cleveland, and they went to the playoffs and beat the Steelers. So I'm just not sure that this is going to be one of those games where you're sitting on the edge of your seat all the time and like, what turd, as Phil says, what turd is going to ruin my lineup? That's what I feel like this is going to be one of those games. You're going to have to eat chalk. You're going to have to eat the chalk, but you're going to have one of those little chocolate drops at the bottom of the depth chart on your team, and hope to God, especially for DFS, and hope to God that they pop off. And this is just not Josh Allen feeding Stephon Diggs all game, right?
Correct. Yeah, I definitely think that with the Evans matchup, with no Tre'Davious White, the great thing about Mike Evans is that he's really, really good in the red zone. So just in the event that he may not get any catches as they drive the ball down the field, again, he's really clutch in that red zone, which is where you need it the most. So if they get in that right in the 25 going in, that's when they also like to target Mike Evans. So that's why I really again like this matchup again even this week, because of those factors, in addition to the fact that I see the Bucks playing from behind, which again you have to throw it to someone, and if Godwin's a little iffy with a neck, that doesn't make me feel really good about his ability to run crisp routes. There is a bit of head motion that's required to be effective. So I wonder if they kind of go away from him and kind of feed the big man.
Plus, like I said, who was it? Somebody had essentially the same target share as him, and it could be because he got injured with the neck, but it was Trey Palmer. Yeah. So Trey Palmer, is a good streaming option tomorrow in your lineups. Get different with him. Khalil Shakir for Buffalo.
Deontay
Hardy. Always break one.
Isn't Shakir the kick returner or no?
Hardy is.
Hardy's the okay.
Hardy's a get different guy too.
Because he's got a bit of speed to him. That's what I remember. He's got a good deal of speed.
That gives points to him and the defense if he scores a touchdown on a punt return. So keep that in mind, that if you're going to play him, you might want to play him in lineups and where you have Buffalo's defense, and that only.
And like what I was about to say is, and you're talking about kind of getting different. I mean, we know we've seen statistics before where somebody that's like on a showdown is like $200. I mean, $200 on a showdown is you can get a player in there and they score a touchdown, or they get 30 yards rushing, they break off a 30-yard run or whatever it is, right? And they filled their bucket for the night, right? And you had 4,800 to play with, right? I mean, there's whatever, right? You get what I'm saying. But you have that less $200. You have more you can stack with, right? So,
yep.
I mean, that Chase Edmonds, I've seen personally, and when he was like in Arizona, Chase Edmonds has been in that dog shit role before when he was behind David Johnson when he was in Arizona.
Yep.
I've seen Chase Edmonds on a Thursday night come alive and be one of those guys that won me, especially in season long for sure, won me the week, or in DFS. I happen to be like, oh well, this dude he's down here at the bottom. I need to make some room. Let me throw him in. I mean, he's only $200 tomorrow. I'm sure his ownership projection is gonna fluctuate, but he's one of those guys. I'm gonna if I'm doing a 20 max or 150 max 100%, I'm gonna have.
Is he behind Keyshawn Vaughn?
Only because he was on IR. Keyshawn Vaughn is they're kind of like. The depth chart is weird right now. It's in flux. What I was reading with Tampa, Chase Edmonds was brought there to be the number 2 because Tampa's just really never been like fully in love with Keyshawn Vaughn. Keyshawn Vaughn does get some of the work as kind of like the banger back a little bit, but I'm not. If I'm doing 150 max, I'm probably personally going to be overexposed to Chase Edmonds, just for the simple fact of the matter, he's only 200, and it's like I could build my lineup with more people. Now, I'm not advocating for anyone to go out there and throw him in as a captain. I'm not saying that, but as a flex play, flex and a punt, like looking at people that are sub 1,000 or in that $200 range. He is my personal preference as who I'm going to try to toss out there because I know what he's capable of, and I know he's starting to slowly work his way back in, or he in the beginning of the season, he was working his way into the offense, and then he got hurt. But he's all good to go off of IR. So
I think Keyshawn is only 600, so probably get exposure to both, but you definitely don't want them in the same lineups.
Yeah.
Reggie Gilliam's only 200 as well.
He's a fullback. That's the only thing about him, and I don't really know how much work.
I've seen him catch passes as far as 30 yards downfield, like in the playoffs last year. Yeah, so he's definitely freaky to ruin somebody's day for a touchdown tomorrow. I think it was playoffs last year. They utilized the shit out of him out of nowhere. I'm like, who the fuck is this dude? Who's Reggie? This dude. He caught like 3 or 4 catches like in the first quarter and was running the ball. And I'm like, wait, who's this dude? And then after that, I play him every showdown. I don't know if he's done anything for me, but he's probably due. And he's 200, just like Chase Edmonds. So run these turds in some lineups because it's going to be a turd day.
Oh, yeah.
100%. And like I said, pair him with certain shit that makes sense. Like Hardy, you only want to pair him with Bill's defense because they both score if he scores. And if a defense scores, you could guarantee they're in the nuts.
Deontay Hardy. If you could get a defense, Josh Allen and Deontay Hardy, because one way or the other, you're getting the double points with him, right? So like he is the option.
It's going to be the nuts. Both of those, if you score with a defense on a showdown, it's the nuts. And if a $200 player scores a touchdown, it's going to be the nuts. And you got them both in the lineup, it's the nuts. No one's beating that. And then that, like Cody was about to say, that saves you so much money. You have a $200 player and a defense. Now you can just stack it. Diggs, Allen, whoever, Evans, and you'll have enough money for all of that. Might even be a solid line. I might even put that in right now as we speak. Diggs, Captain, Allen, Evans, bringing back with Hardy in the defense, and then find one other player, whatever money's left over. Don't know. Didn't run it, but might have to do that. That sounds sick. Might go ahead and see what that looks like. Let's see.
I'm looking at it right now. See if I can.
Let's see. Diggs, Evans, Allen, Hardy, defense. And they got 5,700 left over, so it can go to the kicker Tyler Bass, can go to Dalton Kincaid, who said he's gonna get all the work because no backup. You can get Lats Murray. You can get the kicker for Tampa. You can get Trey Palmer, we were just talking about, for Tampa. Cade Otton. Man, there's a lot of ways to get different. Just with the start of this lineup, I think I would go Kincaid here in this lineup. And it's mean. That's something solid right there. But doing that, that's a 5-1 lineup. So if I take out Kincaid, like I said, I could put in Trey Palmer and run the same thing. And that's a 4-2. Money. I might as well count it because that's money. That's a milli maker type lineup right there, and you eat the chalk with Stephon Diggs at captain.
Yeah.
Man, I think that's about it. It's not a tough slate to target. I mean, quarterback, the numbers speak for themselves. This isn't a game where a lot of players or these teams focus their captains and shit is spread out. It's like 4 main dudes. It's quarterback, running back, wide receiver.
It is also going to be 55 degrees at kickoff, so possibly
Buffalo's used to that. Tampa's not. So
yeah.
This is one of those games right here where I think you want to favor Buffalo because most people are probably sleeping on them because they've been playing bad. Vegas has them at 8.5-point favorites. It's telling you to bet the other team when you should probably just eat that and bet on Buffalo and then win this by, 15 points. You know what I'm saying? Crazy.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That's it. That's my take.
That's it.
I think that's it. I mean, I don't see anybody on the thing, and I think that was my fault because I forgot to send out the link on the Facebook. For some reason, it wouldn't let me send it over there. For some reason, I was trying. But
no worries. They'll watch it.
Computer issues, but
ask the questions in the Facebook group.
For sure. Like we trying to keep the Facebook up to date. Like at least in the inactives and stuff like that in the mornings. Oh, Deshaun Watson's out. We always, because something I was thinking about is we are, what's today? The day is the 25th. We are 6 days, less than 6 days removed from the trade deadline, and here's where Phil's conspiracies come into play, where players get put on show and
advertise backups.
I don't know if this is the case for Tampa and Buffalo, because I don't feel like these two teams are
they got plenty of people to advertise. Chase
trying
Edmonds.
to look past tomorrow, because of the fact that I feel like they're both in divisions that are kind of like up for grabs. For sure Tampa, because that division is just totally dog shit, because Phil's Saints can't beat the AFC South. So like literally the AFC South, they're 2-0 against the Saints. So Brad and I both have the dub against Phil. But yeah, so it's and Buffalo is being already, I feel like people saying they're already on life support on the Super Bowl. Even Pat McAfee said today that their Super Bowl window is shut. So so just keep that in mind too.
All right, fellas, good luck. Bring it on,
everybody.
All right,
ask
everybody.
Questions in the Facebook. All right.
Catch y'all on the flip.
Flip.
Peace.
Flip.